Yo, what's good YouTube? Tempo TCG here, back on the Shuffle Squad YouTube channel, and today I'm going to be going over the top 10 best decks after Orlando Regionals. Now, Orlando was this past weekend, and there was definitely a lot of decks that might have overperformed, some that might have underperformed, so the list has definitely changed a lot from what we saw 2 weeks ago. So, if you guys are interested in this video, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a comment on what decks you think should be on the list, what decks you'd like to see next, and anything you'd like to see us cover. So without further ado, let's jump into the number 10 spot. Accelerating its way into the number 10 spot, we do have Turbo Iron Hands. Now, this deck definitely has fallen from the spots that it has been at. We did see it do really well at EUIC, but it kind of fell off coming into Orlando. This is Yuho's list from EUIC, the 6th place finishing list. I think this is the perfect 60 for Turbo Hands, and if I were to be playing it to an event, this is personally what I would be playing. I think Turbo Hands has a really okay spot in the upcoming metagame. You take a good Lugia matchup, but you kind of get bodied by Charizard, which is really not a deck you want to be bodied by right now. You do have issues with somewhat bricking, but when you do set up, you can be really strong and really aggressive. You're often taking the first prize card. However, I don't really think that this deck is overly well positioned going into our upcoming events, going into this current metagame. So I really just think that there's a lot better decks you can be playing. However, I really think that this deck can definitely be strong. You can maybe go spike a League Cup with it, maybe go win a challenge. But I think that in terms of decks that are popular, you're just not taking great matchups into a lot of stuff. And honestly, I think that there's definitely better times to play Turbo Hands. However, I do think that it is well deserving of this 10th spot. So let's see what's at number 9. Tempest diving its way into the number 9 spot, we do have Lugia V-Star. Now, this is a deck that had really high expectations coming into this format. Everybody kind of thought it was going to be a tier S deck, myself included. If you go back and watch all my tier list videos, I do think that Lugia is a very good play. However, it just hasn't performed the way we'd kind of hoped it would. I think Lugia is still really great, but I just think that there is definitely better decks to play. Lugia still has issues with consistency. It still has just issues with just being absolutely bodied by Turbo Hands, which is a pretty popular list right now. And honestly, sometimes it can just really suck to get setting up. And we do only play 2 Luminion. However, you'd swear we played 6 with how often you start it. I just think it's a Lugia thing to do. Now, this is Zach Lesage's 60 over from Orlando Regionals. He did get top 32, 19th place, if I am correct. Shout out Zach. We did drive down all the way to Orlando together. It was a pretty cool idea. He did hop on Lugia the night before the regional, actually. So I think that's really cool. It obviously did him well. I think Lugia is pretty well positioned, especially with the rise of Charizard. I think a good Charizard matchup is a really good thing to have. I did talk to Zach, and he said that maybe potentially Snorlax is a cuttable card. However, it's something that more testing is definitely going to have to be. Snorlax feels like it can be really strong, feels like it could sometimes just be a nuisance to have in the deck. However, time will tell what Lugia lists eventually just start to look like. Now, one weird thing is Zach does play that 4-3-4-3 of both Lugia and Minccino. This is for consistency purposes, which obviously really paid off because look at the placements. 19th place out of the biggest regional ever is very, very solid. And yeah, that's just kind of Lugia. You're either playing into good matchups and absolutely rolling your opponent, or you're bricking or playing bad matchups and just having a horrible day. And sometimes that's just decks, and especially with these high roll decks, you can have a really deep run because maybe you didn't brick a lot, maybe you hit good matchups, or sometimes you can brick every round and hit horrible matchups, and that's kind of just Lugia. So for that reason, we've got Lugia right here at the number 9 spot. Starbirthing its way into the number 8 spot, we do have Arceus and Giratina V-Star. Now, this is one of those decks that is definitely capable of doing really well at events. It takes a really, really solid Charizard matchup. It's really consistent, and honestly, just being able to utilize both Arceus and Giratina and even Iron Leafs in a game is really good. You have a consistent draw engine with Barrel. You have Starbirth on Arceus, and honestly, what more could you want? Cards like Maximum Belt allow the deck to swing pretty much any EX in the format. Arceus V-Star is able to swing chien-paos. Giratina is able to swing Charizards, and especially with Iron Leaves, with its ability, you're able to also swing Charizard super easy. The deck has a lot of synergy, it's really consistent, and I think it's really well deserving of this number 8 spot. This is Pramawat's list, which I think is probably the most ideal list to be playing right now. I think the 3-3 Barrel is really, really solid. And if I'm playing this to any events, this is the 60 I'm playing. So let's see what's over at our number 7 spot. Here at the number 7 spot, we do have Moon Sparse. Now, Dre does call this deck Biggie Smalls, which I really like that idea. I like that name a lot. I think it's really cool. But Moon Sparse has definitely seen a lot of play. It was actually the deck I hit the most at Orlando in my day 2 and day 1 runs. I think I hit a combined 5 Moon Sparse, which was really crazy considering I don't think it was that high of a percentage of deck. I think Moon Sparse is really well positioned in the current meta. You can swing any single prizers with small Roaring Moon. You can swing any big 2 prizers with big Roaring Moon. And the deck just feels like it's really just doing everything. You're drawing a lot of cards with the Dunsparce. You've got a free retreater in regular Dunsparce. You can use Radiant Greninja to discard cards. You're playing cards like Trekking Shoes for consistency. And honestly, the deck feels super strong right now. Now, this is Cyrus McCain's Orlando Moonsparse list. I think the deck is definitely really solid. I think the list is perfect as it sits. And honestly, shout out to all the people that play it. I think the deck is a little bit high rolly. You definitely have some bricking issues. But if you can just kind of dodge the bricks, dodge the couple bad matchups, I think you're doing really well in the current meta. And for that reason, we have Moonsparse over here at the number 7 spot. Flower selecting its way into the number 6 spot, we have Lost Box. Now this is Pedro Torres's Lost Box list. I think this list is very solid. I think the Pokemon spread, the energy spread, I think everything about the list is really good. Just in my testing, I found that this is probably my favorite list to be playing around with, besides obviously Lost Storm, Raging Bolt. Shout out me for getting that deck a limitless page. But I think that Lost Box is pretty well positioned going into this current meta. You're able to swing pretty much any Pokemon with Roaring Moon. Raikou swings a lot of Pokemon for weakness. You play the Iron Hands to abuse that. Hoopa's really great into Iron Hands, into Arceus, and you are able to use cards like Mew EX to copy maybe your opponent's Radiant Greninja, maybe your opponent's Tempest Dive if you need to bump a stadium. Who knows? Whatever you need Mew EX to do, it can do. And Lost Box is just one of those decks that is tried and true. We know it's really good. We know it can do everything. So there's not really too much to say. Now this list is pretty standard. The 4 Gate, the 4 Colress, Roxanne is really solid. Prime Catcher is the only ace spec you can really play in Lost Box. And yeah, I just really like this list. I think in general, Lost Box has a really good spot in this current metagame. I think the matchup spread is really solid. And honestly, as long as you're able to selecting away good cards and not have stupid selectings that are like double chorus or anything, I think you're probably winning a lot of games. But that is kind of the issue with Lost Boxes. Sometimes you're going to chorus into 5 energy and you're going to have to choose what energies are important and what energies are not. Now, Lost Box is one of those decks that it makes tons and tons of day 2s, and I can definitely see Lost Box winning an upcoming regional. I think it's really well positioned. I think it takes great matchups. So for that reason, we've got Lost Box here at the number 6 spot. Psychic embracing its way into the number 5 spot, we have Josh Frink's top 4 Gardevoir EX list. Now, shout out to Josh for the top 4 placement. Our fellow TSS member, he had a really crazy run with Gardevoir, and I honestly think that Gardevoir is a really solid deck in this current meta. Now, for those of you that did watch my tier list, I did say that Gardevoir was a D tier deck, and honestly, I have been completely proven wrong, and I will admit that I was wrong. I slept on Gardevoir. I think everybody was kind of sleeping on Gardevoir, and it did really well at this regional. I think Gardevoir is definitely positioned super solidly. I did think that the Turbo Hands matchup was really bad, but I think that matchup is really solid for you. You take a good Charizard matchup, and honestly, I think this deck it kind of is just really strong. You can use cards like TM Evolution to set up really well, Mirage Step at home. You can use cards like Mimikyu, Fluttermane, Klefki, and honestly, like the deck just feels super well positioned. It feels like it does everything you want. You can use Eerie too, which your opponents are almost never expecting. And yeah, that's kind of just Gardevoir. The deck is still really good. Maybe people were sleeping on it at the start of the season, but to be honest, I don't think you should be sleeping on it anymore. And if Guardy isn't on your radar for these upcoming tournaments, what are you doing? Coming in at the number 4 spot is Ancient Box. I think Ancient Box is really slept on in our current format, but I think that after all these current results, maybe people are going to stop sleeping. I, for one, was definitely a sleeper on Ancient Box. I thought the deck was big copium, but it turns out the deck is very strong. We did see Gabriel Fernandez take down Senior EUIC with this deck, and honestly, I think that we're probably going to see Ancient Box win another regional. It did just get second in Orlando, but I think that its potential is way higher than that. We could potentially see a deck that has a great conversion rate, that is super cheap and budget friendly, that is just super well positioned in the current meta. And honestly, it's a type of deck we haven't seen in a long time, right? Like, when was the last time you could build a top 5 deck in the meta for sub $15? Like, all these cards are like 10-cent cards, right? Your most expensive card in the deck is your Radiant Greninja, which is like a $5-6 card. Like, your Radiant Greninja and your Awakening Drum are half the budget of the deck. And that's what's absolutely ridiculous about this deck, is that, like, you can just build it with binder cards, right? You open a box of Temporal and you've probably got a whole Ancient Box deck. I think that Ancient Box is really well positioned. It's really budget friendly. And I think that the deck in general is so good. So for that reason, we have Ancient Box here at our number 4 spot. Shivery chilling its way into the number 3 spot, we have Chien-pao. Now, this is Regan's list. I think Regan definitely cracked the code with his deck. Like, Bundle feels great. You do have Bundle and Cologne, which most lists are playing one or the other. And honestly, this deck, Chef's Kiss, feels so good. Cards like Silene, cards like the 4 Buddy Poffin, the Canceling Cologne, the Iron Bundle, it just feels perfect, right? Like, there's nothing I dislike about this deck whatsoever. You're still playing 3 Chien-pao, and honestly, like, there's nothing to hate about this deck. It is a little bit bricky, but that's kind of just sometimes how top decks are. Chien-pao, as we all know, can swing infinite numbers of damage with its super cold on Baxcalibur. You can attach as many water energies as you'd like to Chien-pao EX, which does 60 damage for each water you discard. Cards like Superior Energy Retrieval Grave have great synergy with this, and honestly, the deck just doesn't feel like it folds to anything in particular. Honestly, its biggest weakness is itself, and for that, it kind of sucks, but I can definitely see Chien-pao winning a regional, probably the next regional, because the deck just, it's great. You can use Radiant Greninja, you can use Iron Hands, Chien-pao can do whatever you want it to. Like, the deck, it just feels absolutely nuts. It is a little bit more difficult to play, which some people don't really think about, but I think the deck is super well positioned. I think it definitely is deserving of this number 3 spot, and I definitely think that if you are looking to perform at regionals, Chien-pao has to be a deck you're at least debating to play. We all knew this guy was going to be up here. Coming in at the number 2 spot, we have Lost Zone Giratina. This is one of those decks that everybody was at the start of rotation going, man, maybe Giratina's dead. Maybe it's not that great. Well, here it is. Giratina is back and probably better than ever. Cards like Iron Leaves make the Charizard matchup even better. And to be honest, Giratina just feels absolutely busted in this current metagame. The consistency of Buddy Poffin just means that even if you're turn 1 Abyss Seeking, you can still get out 2 Comfeys next turn if you whiff them all turn 1. I think the deck with cards like Rescue Board gets even stronger, and using cards like Temple of Sinnoh really helps some of your matchups such as Lugia. I think in general, if you are a more competent player, I think Lost Zone Tina is a really strong play. I think just having a really great Charizard matchup is really good in this meta. You still have cards like Sableye, you still have cards like Radiant Greninja, and literally Iron Leaves is absolutely busted. So for that reason, I think Giratina just deserves the number 2 spot. This is Azul's list, which I find kind of ironic because we all know Azul never liked Giratina, so you know it's gotta be really good right now. So shout out to Giratina. Let's see what the number 1 spot is. We already know what it is. It was pretty obvious, but let's see. Do I even gotta say it? Number 1 on the list is Charizard EX. Now, this is the infamous Tord Charizard list, which appears to be probably one of the greatest decks we have ever seen, only challenged by decks like Tier 0 Silver Tempest Lugia V-Star. The deck feels absolutely busted in this current meta. It does everything. It can draw tons of cards with Barrel. You can use cards like Quick Search, swing with a single prizer in Radiant Charizard, and cards like Cleffa offer you free retreat in the early game. Now, I think that this list is probably the perfect 60. Obviously, we've seen it have great success at regionals now. I believe it was 1 card off from the Orlando winning list, which just the fact that 59 out of 60 cards are winning 2 of the biggest events of all time in UIC in Orlando should speak volumes. Charizard is the deck to beat this format, and if your deck isn't beating Charizard or isn't just Charizard in general, you're probably not playing the right deck in this current meta. Charizard is a 20 to 30% meta card, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. The conversion rate is there, the placements are there. Look over at, I believe it was Perth, where they had 5, maybe 6 Charizards in the top 8, which is mind-boggling to me that a deck can be that dominant. So, what did you guys think of the list? What decks were you missing out on, and what decks do you think are going to potentially be here next week? I want to know what you guys think, so please like, subscribe, share the video with your friends, and let us know what you guys want to see next. Until then, I'll see you guys later. Tempo TCG signing off.
Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.